Holy crap. I mean, this episode of The Walking Dead, Season 6, Episode 3, is definitely a competitor for one of the best episodes in Walking Dead history, and that is next to 408, of course, Too Far Gone, probably the best episode in Walking Dead history. This episode just really came out of nowhere in my eyes, and I will say, there was a point in the history of the show where maybe halfway through Season 4, I said, there's never going to be another death where a main character of the show, we're talking Rick, Carol, Glenn, etc., are going to die to a zombie in the same way that, for example, T-Dog died in 304, Killer Within. Those kind of deaths would never happen again because of the significance of those characters and how long they've been on the show. I said that that's never going to happen. It's just never going to happen. And I was totally wrong. And we have the death, spoilers, 603, spoilers if you're not caught up. We have the death of Glenn, one of the most beloved characters in all of the Walking Dead universe, really. And he's been there since the beginning, ever since episode 1, season 1, episode 2 he was in. And, the arc of that character is just so interesting in so many different ways. And I really love this episode as a standalone episode. And you look at standalone episodes, you look at 409, The Death of Tyrese. One of the best episodes in which it is kind of separate from the rest of the plot. It could work on its own. This is an episode similar to that because it has its own themes and its own subtle implications to them that you couldn't pick up on if you don't think about it at an intellectual level. And that's what Gimple, the showrunner of The Walking Dead, is so good at creating subliminal messages. And, some people say the show is boring, blah, 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 and it's definitely not as action-packed as it was previously. Well, not with the exception of these three, but in general, it's not as action-packed as it used to be. So, this episode was so good to me for so many reasons, and you have the whole thing with Michonne writing on her arm, you'll make it, and obviously that's quite ironic at the end of the episode, at which point the guy didn't make it, I don't know his name. And then it's just the season in itself, and okay, so season 6 basically has been trying to villainize Rick, and if you really think about it, that's what they've been trying to do. They've been trying to show the bad side of Rick and show how his intentions are somewhat skewed. And what I mean by that is that basically they're trying to cast out Rick as being a little too harsh. Because he says things like, if they're too weak, if they fall down, you keep going. You don't come back for him. And the rational human being's like, well, that's not a very heroic thing to say. I mean, yeah, well, you should go back for him. But what they've showed in this episode is that Rick is right and everybody else, like Glenn was wrong. And Glenn, at the beginning of the episode, he talked about, we can't leave these people. That's not who we are. And Glenn was wrong. Glenn is dead. That is who you are. You do leave people because otherwise you die. That's the world that you live in. And it's so interesting, and it's such a Darwinistic kind of view, survival of the fittest, to the extreme. And it's always been that way in The Walking Dead. But this episode personifies that even more than it ever has before. And the weak died. And in some episodes, you have some weak people die, blah, blah, blah. In this episode, if you were weak, you are dead. Period. Everybody that was weak. That chick, that had her little broken ankle or whatever, and then you got that guy. They're all dead. All of them. The only guy who survived that was weak was the guy who with the broken ankle, and that's because Michonne and, who else was there with him? Somebody else was there with him and literally helping him along the way. That was the only way he survived. Survival of the fittest. If you're weak, you die. And Rick is the only one that has that view, that purely realistic view. Because Rick, in Season 1, Episode 1, he was the one, out there all alone in Atlanta, in the heart of Atlanta. And they weren't. Everybody else, they were at the top of a mountain without any zombies there. So he has had the hardest path in terms of surviving the apocalypse as anyone, including Morgan. And Morgan, we're going to see in the next episode, a 90-minute feature special, what he went through to get to where he is. And obviously it's not going to be very pretty with the death of his son, everything like that. But in my opinion, this is easily a top 5 best episodes in The Walking Dead history. I don't think anyone called a major character death. Maybe some of you did, seeing that we didn't get any of the last 2 episodes. But just by the amount of deaths that there have been, I was quite surprised by it, I will admit. And I said, no death in the finale. My thought was, yeah, we're in the clear for sure. And like I said, you don't expect a main character like this to die by zombie. It just doesn't happen, and sure, there were other things that led up to it. It wasn't just a zombie that just popped out and bit him. That would be very anticlimactic. But it also reflects Glenn's weakness, and his weakness in the way in which he died. Remember, at the end of season 5, episode 16, he and Nicholas were out fighting. Nicholas is the guy who shot himself in the head. They were fighting, and he shot Glenn. And then at which point Glenn had the opportunity to kill him, and he should have killed him, but Glenn was weak. And Glenn didn't kill him. He didn't kill him for the death of, I forget his name, the guy in Everybody Hates Chris. Okay, he didn't, that guy in 5:14. And then in 5:16, he shot Glenn, and then Glenn didn't kill him. He should have killed him twice in a span of 3 episodes, but he did not. At which point, if he had killed him and incited the weakness and punished him for the weakness that he deserved, that was Nicholas, that is, then Glenn would still be alive, most likely. But by the fact that Nicholas killed himself and ultimately caused Glenn to die as well. So now Glenn is dead because he is also weak. Carol, on the other hand, you look at characters like Carol, and on the face value they are weak, but they're not. And Carol's really tough. So the point is, this episode is really, really good, and if you really actually, kind of study the episode, that's kind of a weird word to use for a TV show, but if you think about the episode on a deeper level and what Gimple's trying to say, and try to interpret what he's trying to say, it's really much deeper than a 44-minute special and a major character dying, which is in it of itself an amazing thing to get. But if you really analyze the episode, Gimple, he's a smart guy, you know what I mean? So he knows what he's doing, and it's definitely an amazing episode, and one that, we'll never forget as Walking Dead fans. So I hope you'll enjoyed. I'm, very distraught by this. I'm going to go ahead and watch The Talking Dead. It's 10:16 right now, and the show ended at 10, so I just went up and recorded this right away. So hope you all enjoyed. If you did, consider the like button, and for more Walking Dead, I do plan to do more Walking Dead. If you guys are interested in that, if it's your first time seeing it, then be sure to subscribe. My name's Slcmof, and we'll see you in the next video.